Lobbies and Gentlegrams, today I got a special plan to give you guys some extra spam in the form of this second channel.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Thank you guys for tuning in. If you came from the main page, the way this channel is going to differ is basically you guys can recommend me some random topics. I'm going to do a lot of reaction videos and just kick it with you guys without all the extra fancy edits and added production that you see on the main channel. So I thought it'd be fitting to review what we've seen in the past, I'd say 12 months in hip hop, because while we have got some amazing projects, let's be honest, this year has felt very dry compared to even 2024, but I would stretch it farther back and say we really haven't seen like a jam-packed year in hip-hop in terms of amazing releases, major moments, all that. Aside from the beef, what other year do you guys remember where you felt like, wow, this year has been larger than life? Classic albums, blockbuster hits, timeless music. It felt like we may have hit a new low in 2025 when it comes to music that's been released, especially in the mainstream. And I think the NFR guys, the NFR podcast, they broke it down really well. I actually grew up in the same town as those guys, so shout out to them. I think they make super dope content. I hope to collaborate with them one day. So this is the closest thing to that for now. We're going to be reacting to them breaking down some really scary stats from this year and overall why the landscape of hip hop and music as a whole has felt very dry in the last few years, but mainly in 2025.
It seems like every single year that passes, the hip-hop genre continues to decline, especially for the mainstream. There was a lot of alarming stats that were released in the past couple of months, and there's one of them that is absolutely ridiculous. We're going to be talking about it at the end of this video. But to start off this episode, listen to this, guys. So, on the global Spotify chart, only 6 songs of the 200 spots are occupied by rap songs. Compare this to exactly this day 5 years ago. There were 56 songs out of the 200 in 2020. This is the worst performance the genre has seen since the chart was introduced 9 years ago. And a lot of the charting songs that are on this list are not even from 2025. You see songs like Without Me from Eminem, or even a Timeless from Playboi Carti and The Weeknd.
Or All the Stars from like 2018, which is like only half a rap song.
So yeah, I covered this already. I think this speaks to a greater shift that's happening. They're going to touch on that later in their video, in how the mainstream is kind of being broken down right now. A lot of the biggest acts of the late 2010s, Travis, Lil Baby, Young Thug, etc., they're not leaving the same impact that they were back then in 2025. And I think it's because people are kind of sick of the stale music we've been getting, right? Every album that you see from a major mainstream act in the last like 5 to 10 years has had the same features on it, the same producers on it, and the same subject matter on it. Eventually, people are going to say we've had enough, right? And I think the fact that, you know, they use this stat to say things are looking scary, in that there's only 4 hip-hop songs on the global Spotify charts, which is the lowest in the chart's 9-year history. But it's worth noting that those 4 songs on the Spotify chart, 3 of them belong to Kendrick Lamar. It wasn't a Drake, it wasn't a Travis Scott, it wasn't a Lil Nas X or a Lil Uzi Vert, which is a lot of what we saw dominating over the last half of the 2010s. I do think there will be a change coming in terms of what people want to hear, artists that they want to listen to, the message that they want to get from the music they consume. And I think it'll take some time to get there, and I think that's why things look a little dry right now. It's almost like an adjustment period.
And it's just alarming, bro, because you go through this mix, right? And you start to see different mainstream rap acts, for example. Let's take Lil Baby, Young Thug, Travis this year. And the music they're releasing is not only, let's say, poor in quality, but it's not even sticking in the mainstream anymore. And I feel like we've gotten to a point to where, yes, you could have a super hot name, yes, you could have a global brand, yes, you could have a dedicated fan base, but if the music is not good, it's just not gonna stick. And yes, I understand there has been amazing hip-hop albums from other sides of the genre, right? We've gotten great underground albums this year. Shout out to McKinley Dixon. Shout out to J-Mac. Shout out to Marco Plus. D2X released great music this year. You had Jid with a great album that dropped this year. Clipse did a great run this year too. You could consider that mainstream hip-hop.
Yeah, and you could argue like at the furthest extent of mainstream, maybe the underground of the mainstream would have, let's say, Jid and Freddie Gibbs. And then with Clipse, I mean, that album sold over 100,000 copies first week. You have to kind of consider that mainstream hip-hop. So there are artists thriving. When you look at the majority of the bunch, these albums are not only flopping commercially for the most part, besides maybe a Music by Playboi Carti, but no one's really enjoying the music anymore.
No, of course not. Like looking at Wham or Jack Boys 2 or even this UI Scooty
Or
situation.
Lil Wayne's The Carter 6.
Yeah, like these are supposed to be monumental blockbuster albums, right? Like think about the film industry, right? Like as much as people love their indie films and going into like, let's say, smaller niches and pockets of cinematography, you want your blockbusters, bro. You want your massive movies because they create these cultural moments that build up the genre, right? It intrigues new people to come in. It intrigues new artists to attack different sounds, right? Like think about the way Kanye was innovating the sound back then, or the way that Jay-Z did it, or the way that Drake was doing it. Kendrick, Cole, Eminem, like when it was really prime time for these rappers, there was a responsibility for these guys to carry the genre on their shoulders. And I feel like that is no longer relevant whatsoever.
Yeah, I completely agree here. And I've been saying this for a while, right? Like, whenever I talk about this topic, a lot of you guys say, who cares about the mainstream, right? Like, just focus on the music that you like. And to a certain degree, of course, you can always go dig and find music that resonates with you. But when we're talking what's going to resonate on a global level, what's going to shift the genre forward, what's going to innovate the sounds overall, you need these big mainstream releases to shake up the game every once in a while for several reasons. One, it makes every artist step their game up. Like when Kanye West beat out 50 Cent in that sales battle for Graduation, look at the shift that we saw happen after that, right? After that, you got the introduction of all these blog era rappers who weren't necessarily focused on street music, but instead, incorporated more melody, incorporated more emotion, more vulnerability into their music. You had the Kid Cudis, Wale, even Drake, J. Cole. Then look at the way the game changed after Kendrick Lamar came out with Good Kid, Mad City, and you had the whole TDE movement. You started getting posse cuts like One Train or Control. Odd Future took over, ASAP Mob took over. Look at Lil Wayne selling 1 million copies in the first week with the Carter 3. That ushered in a whole new movement of literal Lil Wayne clones, right? The Young Thugs and Lil Uzis. My point is, without these massive mainstream blockbuster releases, without these superstars continuously dropping projects, keeping the genre elevating to new levels, not only does the atmosphere feel less inspired than ever, but it's also going to get less investment from the labels than ever, which will lead to a slippery slope.
So what do you think is happening right now, Lou? Especially with these statistics, it's getting alarming. The mainstream is absolutely flopping, and it seems like we're in a really dry stretch right here where it's like, besides music, mainstream-wise, what's really hitting right now, commercially?
I mean, listen, I think there's a lot of issues to tap into. One of them being just the comfort level of a lot of these artists, right? Like, think about the caliber of artists that we're talking about and how much success they've already had in the genre, right? The Lil Waynes, the Lil Babies, the Young Thugs, even Drake, who arguably put out his worst album this year, even though it was more of an R&B album. A lot of these artists don't really have too much to prove. They've already filled up their bank accounts. They already have most of them classics in their catalogs. Is there really a need to push the envelope and to put out the best music of their career? Or is it just easier to cruise and put out an album because there's certain headlines around their name and that maybe they're due for an album because it's been a couple of years, but that creative inspiration maybe has started to fade away?
I actually think there's like an added layer to this, right? Like what Lou was saying here is that these rappers, they're beyond rich. They've accomplished everything they could possibly imagine. So at this point, there's nothing really inspiring them to go further, right? They're kind of just dropping albums because they feel like they're due for one. I think it's bigger than that. I think the reason why you're seeing, Lil Wayne drop a Carter album and him say virtually absolutely nothing on that project, aside from, the odd bar talking about real stuff like taking care of his kids or, the hardships his grandmother went through, or seeing Drake, make this music as if he's in these relationships with, 20-year-old women who have no substance, who he finds on Instagram. Just super, shallow things, right? Like all this shallow subject matter. I think that's a product of them becoming larger than life. And at this point, having no real struggle, no real, everyday life situations to discuss. What does a Lil Wayne or a Drake lifestyle look like in 2025? They wake up, maybe they got a butler wiping their butt, someone cooking them food, they smoke a little blunt, hit the studio, maybe hit the club, maybe do a show, go to sleep, do it all again. What is there to rap about at this time? And this is kind of what I was emphasizing before, right? We need a new crop of superstars. How do we get there if the label doesn't want to invest in the future of the genre? It's going to be very hard. But if you don't have a new crop of superstars leading the way, it's going to be very hard to expect, the guys who have been doing this for 10, 15, 20, some even 30, like Lil Wayne, years, right? Like it's going to be very hard to expect them to be doing this at the same level they were once doing in their prime. That's why you need the next generation to kind of carry that torch. Like Imagine in the 2010s if we didn't have the blog era, if Kanye West didn't break down those barriers with, the graduations and the 808s and heartbreaks, and we didn't get the Kid Cudis and the Wale's and the Big Crits, Kendricks, J. Cole, right? We'd be left with the previous generation, the Kanye himself, Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, maybe the occasional T.I. or Jeezy album. That's who would have been carrying the genre throughout the 2010s, and I don't think it would have been nearly as exciting had we not seen that brand new generation of blog era artists emerge. In the 2020s, we don't have that, so we're still looking to the Lil Waynes and the Drakes and the artists of the previous generation to bring us something new, something fresh, to push the culture forward, to innovate and create a lane for the next generation. And that's a problem because they've been doing this for almost 20 years, right? It's hard to keep expecting magic from someone who's been doing this for so long.
I think another big issue, bro, like listening to UI Scooty, I thought to myself, I'm like, how the fuck would his team and the engineers and people that were part of the building of this album, minus Thug, how are they approving this music, bro? I think a lot of these artists also suffer from being surrounded by too many yes men who just say, okay, bro, you like it, I like it. We're all making money together. I get to have a Young Thug placement.
Yes, but then are you really pushing the envelope on your product, right? Because we've talked to a lot of different record label execs about this, and bro, there's people in the industry that genuinely feel this way, where it's like everything's fucking stagnant right now. The entire development system for new artists and new acts is getting crazy. I also think there's a lack of refreshing faces right now in the mainstream of hip-hop that are pushing the envelope, right? If you look at, let's say, I'm not sure, look at a Netspend or a Yeet, for example. Yes, they've created their own lanes and their own like little subgenres within hip-hop, but is it really pushing the genre forward mainstream-wise? No, because looking at the statistics, they're having trouble breaking through themselves. Like, they're not having the chart power or the chart stay that the previous batch of superstars were having. So it creates this stagnant feeling in the genre and no one knows where to go anymore.
And that's a good point. I don't think they spent enough time discussing that. That's like one of the biggest factors of this all, is that the streaming era brought the death of the A&R. If you guys don't know what an A&R is, they're essentially responsible. Their job title is, for a record label, they find, they sign, and they develop. Most importantly, they develop artists. They help shape the music, the sound, the image, the career direction, everything about the artist, right? Back in the day, every artist, no matter how big or how small, had someone in the room kind of lending a helping hand, right? Having a fresh perspective in there, because as an artist, your job is to create. It's a whole other cape that you're wearing if, you're trying to be like a Kanye West, where you're being a visionary in this whole thing. You're thinking about what the soundscape will sound like in 10 years from now and trying to create that in the current day. But that's what an A&R's job is for. They're responsible for keeping an ear to the pulse of the culture and understanding, what would push things forward, what would sound good in today's climate, what would impact on a global level. I'm working on this Lil Wayne documentary. I saw an interview of him the other day. I've been going down a rabbit hole of like 2008 Lil Wayne interviews. They were asking him what he thought about his song Dr. Carter off the Carter 3, and he looked at them in shock, like, how do you know the song Dr. Carter? He didn't even know that it was actually on the track list of his album, The Carter 3, his biggest album of all time. He had no idea what songs were actually on the track list. And that shows you he had a team around him that was making sure the right songs got placed on the project. That team is obviously not around today to do the same with the Carter 6. If you guys watched the Zane Lowe interview with Kanye West back in 2013 after Yeezus, he emphasized the same thing. He brought Rick Rubin into the studio to basically shorten the track list and create, or help him execute the vision that he wanted for that project. In the streaming era, all you got to do is just, push your music onto SoundCloud, push it online, whatever. If it goes viral, you now have the ability to potentially become a superstar. It's easier than ever. So that A&R job got eliminated. These labels, they're looking to turn a profit, right? They don't want to pay an A&R $90,000, $100,000 a year to sit in the studio with a rapper to make sure their albums sound good if the rappers can just get a viral hit off TikTok and make the labels as much money as they would have with the A&R, right? Think about that for a second. Why would it make sense to pay an A&R when all you got to do at this point is, for free, post your music onto TikTok and go viral, and the artists can do that themselves? That's why people call someone like Doechii an industry plant, because she spent years perfecting her craft, and she had a hard, strong team. That sounds dirty. I didn't mean it like that. She has a very strong team around her to make sure that what she put on her, first project, her first mixtape, she calls it, her introduction to the world, they made sure that thing was stacked with quality, right? It was cohesive, but still diverse. It was thematic, right? Like you could tell TDE really spent a lot of time developing her as an artist, and people haven't seen that in years, and that's why when you do see it, you think it's been manufactured. You think it's a gimmick. I mean, nowadays also with the internet, like you have all the tools at your disposal, right? You can just go on YouTube, find yourself a beat, you could record yourself at your house. You don't really need that extra team around you to make sure that the music comes out quality. It's kind of like trying to learn karate on your own versus having like a sensei or whoever teaches you karate right next to you, right? Like you can go on YouTube and try to learn it by yourself, but you won't be as refined as you would if you had someone actually coaching you. And that's a big problem in today's age. Without that A&R position being very prevalent within the game, people or artists don't really care about putting that quality into full-length projects at this point. And no one's there to stop them from putting out a bunch of mid, right? Because as long as it blows up on TikTok, then the labels are happy and it's all good.
I think that's a big problem is when you look at like the popular underground scene of today, it's a lot of artists that are in really like these two main subgenres, which are rage rap, and then you have what people are calling like jerk music, which is, again, like you said, the Shays, the Two Hollises, the Net Spends, the Xavier So Bass, the Osama Sons. Like all of these artists are part of like those realms, those subgenres, and a lot of them sound like clones of each other, if I'm being totally honest. They all seem to have, it sounds like the same producer locked in a basement creating the same style of beats.
And it's crazy because I haven't heard of any of these artists. I haven't heard a single song from any of these artists, I should say, which is nuts, right? And that's what the internet has enabled, right? Like these artists can be huge. Look at the David situation, right? Like that guy who's a part of that horrible case that's been going on, right? He had massive songs before that case ever even happened. And I never heard of that guy. I'm sure a lot of you guys probably haven't either. And it's because the internet has fostered this ability for artists to just basically blow up on certain platforms, but you might not hear them if you're not on those platforms or if you're just on a completely different side of the internet, right?
It's a lot of music that's just sort of like drenched in recency, right? Where it's let's conform to a new hot topic and let's see who's the one that's able to be the most mysterious while doing it. And I think everyone looked at what Carti did this decade and was just like, okay, let me take that blueprint for myself and let's kind of switch production up a bit. And, you know, I have a completely different voice, so it's automatically different. Like, no, like there needs to be an identity. But regardless, like, I think
that's the tip of the iceberg because
it is.
I think the labels are also looking for the next Carti and looking for maybe the next Lil Baby, and like they're sort of like typecasting a certain type of rapper who's had success, but maybe the limited success that we've seen, perfect example, a Lil Baby have, where we're seeing the decline in sales, in demand for live shows, etc. So that's a big problem.
That goes back to what I was saying before, right? The labels are always going to chase the bag. They're always going to chase what the previous superstar did and try to emulate it with the next superstar. And in previous generations, yeah, you had the Kanyes and the Lil Waynes who inspired the next crop of artists, and their sound was integral in that next generation, but it seemed like there was still a more unique approach to what people are doing, but TikTok has completely eradicated that, right? You just need a formula at this point. You just need to sound as generic as possible because the music is just catered to mindless doom scrolling. And that's why we need new superstars, because look at what they said. They're exactly right? Like a Playboi Carti, he is the perfect example of someone in 2025 who could be considered a superstar at this point. But I would argue there's a lack of inspiration in his music, and as a result, the next crop of artists that are trying to follow under his wing, that the labels are pushing because, of course, he became massive, so let's try to recreate that. It falls into this endless loop of just uninspired artists who, again, they're just chasing a formula.
Let me ask you too this. Do you think the audience is to blame in the sense of the type of talent that we're getting, maybe the quality of music, in the sense of, what I will say is this: a lot of the newer generation of listeners, they do prefer the vibe of the music more than like the actual, let's say, content of the music.
But even if you're making good vibe music, bro, like for example, when I was listening to Bada 6 or early Future, yeah, they weren't the craziest, songwriters, but for the most part, a lot of it was sort of built around the vibe. I don't think, the audience never knows what it really wants. It only knows what it wants once it's given to them. And it's like, yo, this is fresh. This is fucking crazy. This is incredible. Because that's just what artistic, expression is, right? Like, I don't I don't create my podcast or like around my opinions around what everyone else thinks just for the sake of pleasing people. And I feel like that's what a lot of artists are doing. It's like this pleasing contest, where it's, well, I'm going to sacrifice my own artistic output just to be able to fit into a certain mold. And that becomes a problem. Also, another problem that we were talking about with one of our close friends that's really deep in the music industry is that a lot of the management and a lot of the structure around these artists, it's extremely loose now. It's like a fucking daycare, right? Where the artist development and putting money into these artists and, like back then you used to have to follow a certain formula to be able to release a studio album. If Kanye wanted to release a Graduation, it had to be in collaboration with his label. His A&R had to tell him when he was going to drop it, and it had to be of a certain quality. But now the artists don't want to hear that. They want to be able to drop at whatever time they want. This is it. Let's get it out. I agree. I think there should be that sort of like loose nature to it. But to a certain extent, you still need the foundation of the label and of the teams to be able to form these sounds. It goes back to what you were saying about the Yes Men. If everyone just lets people, like, let's say, release this music and it goes out to the public and it's all half-assed and no one's telling the artist, like, hey, like, let's take some more time on this. Let's get this producer in. Let's do, like, where's the art of the collaboration? Like, bro, you're just whipping shit out there to keep your fans happy and to keep your streams up. At that point, what are you really doing? And then the whole other conversation becomes, well, you have all these artists that are conforming to the Spotify algorithms, right? It's like, well, how do you want me to compete in this new age of DSPs?
And speaking of that, it's crazy because they're all pandering to these algorithms and wanting to chart high. But when you look at the Billboard Hot 100 of this current week, there's no rap songs in the top 20. And there's only about 19 songs in the entire Hot 100 that are rap songs, and 15 of them are from Cardi B's new album.
And yes, this is exactly what I was saying before, right? It can all be attributed back to TikTok and the incentive that labels have to push artists that are just following this formula that's going to work for a 15-second soundbite on TikTok. It's no longer about these massive, big-budget albums that have a real message behind them, have a real sound behind them that will push the genre forward, because those are expensive to make. I don't think the audience is to blame in the slightest, because the audience, like Lou said, have given up on this formulaic garbage. You can see it in the charts. There's no rap songs on the charts because what are we going to listen to? Yeet? This Drake Iceman crap? Like, there's a reason why these songs are not sticking, why the replay value is not there. They're catered for TikTok. They're catered for a 15-second soundbite. The audience can't be to blame, but the labels are going after an audience that's on TikTok that doesn't even care if the vibe or the sound is good. It just has to be hypnotizing enough where it hooks you in for that 15 seconds. I can name you a million examples of this, right? Like, for a while, the only song I heard on Instagram was that Pink Pantheress song where she's like, my name is Pink and it's really nice to meet you. Like, you probably might not even know what I'm talking about if you aren't on my corner of the internet where you see that meme a million times. And that's what I mean about the internet, right? Like, that song is probably massive. It probably has a million or billions of streams or whatever the case is. I've heard it because I see memes that feature it. If you're not on Instagram looking at these brain rot memes, you probably never even heard that little 15-second soundbite. But I myself, who have heard that, hi, my name is Pink, it's nice to meet you, I've never even actually heard the frickin' song. But that song still has probably made the labels millions of dollars. So the incentive is to just recycle and try to chase that 15-second soundbite over and over again.
Even crazy when you look at just number ones for this year, bro. In 2025, the real answer should be 0 hip-hop songs that have gone number 1, but technically it's 1 with Travis Scott's 4x4, which obviously only landed there because of the immense bundles he had attached to it, selling CDs, selling shirts with the release of the single.
Had a crazy drop-off, too, in the second week.
It literally dropped off to 57 the following week. That's not a number 1 hit to me, bro. That is not a number 1 hit. It's a manufactured hit. It's a bought hit. But you look at 2024, last year, 5 rap songs reached number 1. 2023, only 3 rap songs, and that was a slow year as well for the mainstream, and you didn't have a number 1 until Doja in August. 2022, 5 rap songs went number 1. 2021, 7. 2020 had 10 rap songs go number 1. You look at 2018, 8 rap songs went number 1. We're even seeing just a lack of hits all around the fucking board, bro.
Yeah, I mean, again, look at 2024, like he listed off, right? Like, that year, there were a lot of rap hits that made it to number 1 on the charts. But if you actually dig deeper, it was all a bunch of Kendrick Lamar songs, right? Because of the moment he created. He understood that, like, something needs to be shaken up here. But a lot of these artists have not been able to realize that, and as a result, they're going to suffer. If you look at the highest selling rap albums of this year, GNX is at number 1. That album came out not in 2025, but it's the highest selling album of 2025. Tyler's Chromacopia is up there as well. Both those 2 albums and the Doechii album, all 3 of those albums outsold in total, the Lil Baby, the Young Thug, the Travis Scott, the Yeet album, the A Boogie album, the new Lil Wayne album, all these albums combined.
So that's what
So
I'm
it's
trying to
like,
ask you. Is like,
what's happening, bro? Like, why aren't people able to cut through the noise? And I think a lot of them are obviously, a lot of these superstars not on their A game for some of the reasons I mentioned earlier. I think a lot of them are pandering, forcing the music, not really being inspired by their real life experiences or just what's driving them on a creative level. And no one's really doing anything entirely unique anymore. I think those are the major issues. And I see a lot of people saying, like, you know, stop harping over the mainstream. Fuck the mainstream. If you're a real hip-hop fan or you're a real music fan, you don't need to rely on the mainstream to be happy. But I do take issue with that, just in the sense of, like, yes, I love a lot of underground releases. I think the underground has been above the mainstream for a couple of years at this point in this genre.
And it usually is, actually.
Yeah, it usually is. That being said, bro, the mainstream is what labels, festivals, brands, that's where their money is going into, bro. If mainstream hip-hop is thriving artistically, that's where the funding comes from, bro. The infrastructure, the attention, it all trickles down then into the underground. You got to think about it this way, too. Think about, like, a new hip-hop listener, bro. They're going to be exposed to what's popular, and only then are they going to be able to sort of trickle down into the underground and find these new artists. So what I'm trying to say is that you need the mainstream to thrive if you care about hip-hop and you want to see these underground artists be able to actually make a living, bro, doing this.
Absolutely.
Because if not, it's just going to fucking drown, bro. It's going to be a sinking ship.
And that's a great point, too, about the whole mainstream thing, right? Like, yes, you, as a hip-hop fan who has already been immersed in the genre, who understands it, who knows how to dig and find artists that they like, you can go ahead and find some great music out there. But for the everyday casual listener, if they're not introduced to hip-hop, if they don't hear it, you know, in their algorithms, on the radio, at parties, at the gym, whatever the case is, they're not going to be, you know, incentivized, or not even incentivized. They're not going to think to ever go and search for these artists, to invest in these artists. And then as a result, the labels don't invest in these artists. And then you get a slippery slope. That's why you're seeing so many new Latin artists emerge, so many new country artists emerge, because you got these superstars at the top of the game in those respective genres, the Taylor Swifts, Bad Bunnies, the Morgan Wallens. The labels see that, they see dollar signs, so they start investing in the smaller artists in those genres. And then as a result, those genres build up bigger and bigger. That's why you're seeing people like Big X The Plug go from hip-hop to dropping strictly country albums. That's where the money is, but as a result, hip-hop suffers. It's a vicious cycle, right? Like, if all the top superstars are kind of bored at the top, rich at the top, uninspired at the top, they're not going to be at the top of their game, which is going to set the standard of competition lower for the next generation of artists. And if the next generation of artists aren't inspired, aren't on their A game, then the labels aren't going to invest in that music to continue pushing it forward, because it's not hitting the charts, it's not making a real impact. Kids are not, you know, into hip hop because they're not hearing it everywhere they go. Like, when I was a kid, the first genre of music I was introduced to, aside from whatever my parents were playing in the car, whatever, was hip hop, because it was everywhere. It was on the radio, it was on the internet. And because of that, I was able to fall in love with the genre. And now, yes, I can go and find music that I like today, right? Like, I'm still playing that Jit album, I'm still playing the Clipse album all the time, the Freddie Gibbs album, the Ab Soul project from late 2024. But even me, I'm waiting to see, you know, when we're going to get the next Good Kid, Mad City, the next Graduation. Who's going to deliver that? Who has the inspiration right now, the hunger, the drive to deliver something like that?
It already is a sinking ship. And I think, like, I was having this conversation with one of our friends, too, over, like, how rock kind of went through the same thing in the 90s and the 2000s, where it was the biggest fucking genre alive, bro, especially in, you know, in the 80s and the 70s. And then the product started getting more and more diluted. You saw rock go through so many different transformations, and then it essentially became sort of a legacy genre, to where then hip-hop starts to take over. And I'm starting to see that with hip-hop now going into country. You're starting to see that shift happen right now, because I don't consider pop a genre. Pop is not a genre. It was just a way to classify, like, popular artists. Like, really, if you want to stick it to the music and the genres, then now it's really a country takeover at this point. And like you were talking about with the live performances and the festivals, it's starting to affect that area as well. So There are currently only 6 rap acts on the Coachella 2026 lineup. You have Young Thug, Clipse, Sexy Red, Central C, Little Sims, and Sway Lee. This is the lowest number of rap acts the festival has seen in the past 8 lineups. Just for context, back in 2022, the festival saw the most rap acts with a total of 19, including 21 Savage, Baby Keem, Lil Baby, and others. And that same year, Ye was supposed to perform until The Weeknd replaced him. So this is another indication, and when I was speaking to a couple of different promoters in the city and massive promoters and bookers here, another problem too from the back end, this is real, is that especially with rappers and artists in the rap genre, they'll ask for excessive amounts of money with no motion. Where it's like, well, I gotta show up, I have a fan base. It doesn't work like that, bro. Like the festivals are gonna stop booking because they legitimately do not have the budget and you don't have the pull. So now you're creating this market for these live. Okay, so let's say someone like me, let's backtrack. Let's say I want to start going to rap shows and I like rap festivals. That might not be a possibility for me anymore as a fan because now the rappers are asking for too much money when it's completely undeserved, and now the booking agencies and people that are actually booking the talent, they cannot justify that ROI. It's like, why am I going to book you as a rapper when you can't even fill out a 1,000 person venue and you're asking me for fucking 300 bands? Like how? Like where am I going to justify this? Yeah. I'm going to have different artists in the country lane. I'm going to have different EDM artists. By the way, that genre is fucking exploding too right now, where they're asking for a fraction of your cost.
Yeah, listen,
and they're going to draw good crowds.
Nah, he's 100% right, and I'm speaking as someone who lives in the same town as them, right? So there is a scary lack of hip hop concerts, live shows that you can go to in Canada right now. That ship has been declining for years at this point. I actually met the NFR guys. They might not remember this. 2 years ago in 2023 at the last hip hop festival. It was kind of like a mini Rolling Loud that we had in our city. They had to cancel it in 2024 because there just wasn't the demand for it. When I was growing up, when I was like in late years of high school and going into university, there was never a shortage of hip hop concerts you could go to. When I tell you, I saw every rapper, big to small, right? Like I saw 2 Jay-Z concerts. I've been to 2 Kanye concerts. I saw Drake and Future in 2015. Lil Wayne, Rick Ross, Kid Cudi, Chance the Rapper, Metro Boomin, Joey Badass, Tory Lanez. There were a lot more. And honestly, ever since COVID, like the amount of hip hop acts that come to Canada has just been on the decline year after year. I mean, Joey Badass was supposed to come with Absol and Rhapsody. That's a 3-person lineup for one concert. The concert tickets in my city to go see them were going for $50 Canadian. That's about like $35 in US dollars. They ended up canceling the show. They couldn't fill out a 2,000-person venue. And Joey Badass came on his own a couple of years ago. I saw him in 2017 in this same city. He filled out, I believe it was like a 3,000-person venue all by himself. Maybe one artist isn't fair to generalize the entire genre, but I can't name you the last hip-hop act that has come to my city. Tyler, the Creator, came last year. Tickets were going for like $500. I look every couple of weeks to see, what concerts I can go see. There's been nothing. We used to have a festival here, a massive festival where tons of legends have come to perform. Eminem has been on this lineup. Snoop Dogg, Outkast has been on this lineup. One year I saw Future, Mac Miller, The Weeknd, Post Malone all on the same day at this festival. This year, in 2025, Tyler, the Creator, and Doechii were the only 2 rappers to be on that same lineup for that same festival. And that Mac Miller, Future, Post Malone, The Weeknd show that I was telling you guys about, Logic was also there. That's 5 massive hip-hop acts in one single day. This year in 2025, the whole lineup only had 2 hip-hop acts for a 3-day festival. And I really hope that hip-hop is not becoming what rock was, after the 90s. I hope it doesn't, fade off into oblivion or whatever the expression would be. But a shift has got to happen. Someone has got to shake up the game, and they got to do it soon. Unless hip-hop just lives in the underground, but it doesn't make sense. It can't. Because if there's no money in this, how are these, you ever heard of a starving artist? How are these amazing underground artists going to make a living and going to sustain and improve as artists if they can't make a living off it? It's amazing to me to hear, people like Jid who, they're not massive mainstream acts, right? They're selling like 20, 30,000 in the first week, but they're still packing out 2,000 people venues in every city they go to. Same thing with the Clipse, same thing with Schoolboy Q. It's great to see that, you still have those artists that exist that built strong, dedicated, cult-like fan bases who will support everything because the quality of the music deserves it, right? But how are we going to continue to see more and more of these artists do that at higher levels if there's no investment behind them and no inspiration from them. I'll leave you guys at that because I don't have the answers. I'm looking forward to see what we get from the rest of 2025. But right now, aside from a couple albums, I'm not going to lie, it's looking pretty cooked. But as always, let me know what you guys think. Shout out to NFR, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.